VERNOMATIC Productions.
Are you ready?
Live from the Metal Mayhem Studios in Rochester, New York.
We are gold. We are gold.
And heard around the world by metalheads just like you. This is Metal Mayhem ROC.
Heavy metal music.
Your weekly dose of metal music, interviews, album reviews, news, and more. Want to be part of the show? Send us a message through our website, metalmayhemroc.com, or hit us up on Facebook and Twitter. Search Metal Mayhem ROC.
It's getting nice and heavy.
Now, welcome our hosts, John the VERNOMATIC Verno, and direct from New Jersey, Metal Walt.
Our guest today is Tony Simerman, CEO and Creative Director of Knucklebonz. Knucklebonz is a high-end collectible of rock and roll, heavy metal, legend memorabilia. Tony's here today to talk about the company, the production of the products. We're even going to take a walk down his heavy metal history and find out about his fly-on-the-wall experiences as a kid in the 70s, watching some of the greatest rock and roll arena shows. Tony, welcome to Metal Mayhem ROC.
What's up, fellas? Nice to see you.
Things are good. Things are good. I'd like to introduce you to my co-host, goes by the name of Metal Walt.
What's up, Tony? How are you? Good to meet you finally.
Metal Walt, how are you?
I'm good. So I will start this off by offering my congratulations. I see your company is celebrating 20 years in the business, correct?
20 years in a row. In a row.
Well, that's good because
I like to add that.
Some say 20 years, but you started in 1984. So
yeah. 20 years in a row.
So, Tony, I have a little icebreaker for you, and I'm going to share my screen, and I want you to close your eyes.
All right.
All right. And I'm going to tell you when to open.
Can I open my eyes now, Dad? The Tommy Boy moment.
Ding! Go ahead, open your eyes.
Oh, some old friends there.
So this is in my heavy metal man cave or my home office because I work from home, and they're right up on the shelf above me over there.
Yeah, that's a nice little spread of time there as far as Knucklebonz history.
Yeah, they're early on. I was looking underneath. You had to get the dust off the bottom and serial numbers handwritten. It could be your print there. So like the old what's that guy that used to do the hair treatment guy? He's like, I'm not only the owner, I'm a client. It's kind of like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So wow. Anyway,
I never even saw those.
Those are good to see because we have the prototypes and we have everything, over 20 years, but all that stuff right there is in the vault. I haven't seen those statues in a minute.
Yeah, it's funny when you go to your website. I mean, you search your products, none of them even come up. So they're like in the Hall of Fame, right?
That's our bad. Now we're gonna launch something digitally later this year, and a Knucklebonz history of Hall of Fame will be there. So you'll be able to see everything and some liner notes about all the productions. We're just so busy doing what we do and moving on to the next project. We have a bad habit of, build and move on. We got to do a better job because been doing a few different podcasts here recently, and that's come up in almost every one of them. Hey, I want to find out about the Neil Peart that you did in 2006, and where is it? And it's like, yeah, it's in the vault, and the only good pictures of it are a lot of times, what the collectors put up because our original stuff is down, so we need to do a better job with that.
Lance, before you dive into this, I just want to do that again. Well, before you dive into this, I do want to alert the listeners that there's going to be some visuals through this, and feel free to watch the YouTube video. But what Walt had shared with Tony was a vintage potential Hall of Fame entry of a Lemmy, a Ted Nugent from the Cat Scratch Fever era, and it looked like a Ronnie James Dio. So that was great stuff. I have something. I don't think it's your work, but I got a little Dan Marino guy. You're not behind?
Yeah, that's we've been asked over the years. We're a collectibles company, but we consider ourselves, a music, merchandising company, because we've only done things associated with music, and we've been pulled in a lot of different directions to do things. And you know what? There's generally other people doing it and doing a good job with it. Metal fans, rock fans in particular, a lot of times are underserved, and that's why we founded the company 20 years ago. We recognize that those fan bases, as everybody, the three of us know how passionate those fans are, but it's not apparent to everybody if you're not part of it or you didn't grow up with it, right?
Yeah, I'm a fan.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, we all know it, but many don't.
So Tony, that was going to be like our lead conversation for you is, we want to talk about your product, the company, and all that other stuff, but how, you got an amazing body of work, but take us through your personal journey, right? So we know that your dad, he was a manager of some high-end, high-profile, arenas, clubs in the DC area. I suppose as a kid, you were hanging around with him, maybe helping him out. So how did you get going in this rock journey? Were you sitting on the tour buses or sitting in the corner room while your dad's working and you're you got your autograph book? What was going on as a kid?
So the love for the heavier side of things, I'm in third grade, and I get asked to go to Catholic school, leaving public school. That's another story. But I went from public school to Catholic school, and the Catholic school didn't have any bus service. So I needed a way to get there. Both my parents worked. So they had the neighbor kid who had just graduated high school. He was my ride. And 1968 Dodge truck with an 8-track. And the kid, Ronnie White, he listened to Sabbath and the James Gang and Deep Purple. So that was my soundtrack on the way to Catholic school. So listening to "Would you like to see the Pope on the end of a rope? Do you think he's a fool?" and dropped off, "Have a nice day" at Holy Spirit Elementary.
Tony, what year was this?
This would have been 70. So the first Sabbath records are dropping 70, 71, right? So
no, but you're in third grade. How old are you now?
I'm 61.
Oh, okay. I'm 55. So just to put a time frame. So
yeah. So those records are new, and I'm hearing them on 8-tracks. So I can tell you how old I am. So the affinity for the heavy stuff, that's where it starts, because that's what I listened to and from school. And of course, if that's the kind of music you're going to identify with, you feel that in your bones right away. That's a DNA level connection if that's something you're going to latch onto for your whole lifetime. And I did. But that's where it started. And then you mentioned my dad. A little bit after that, he was the director of the Navy band. He was actually a military guy, and had been in the military since he was young, but was still a young man and retired out of the military and went into the theater management business. So he managed a couple of places in Washington, D.C. One was called Constitution Hall. That's still there. And that's about a 2,000, either side of 2,000 seat arena. And then he was there for a couple of years, and then he went to the Kennedy Center, which at that time was, brand new, really. It wasn't even 5 years old. So, between those two venues, again, parents worked. I just have to go to work a lot. So I'm by default just around backstage. In any given time, I could see Sly and the Family Stone one night and the Doobie Brothers the next night, and Queen, Kansas, Mahogany, Rush the next night. It was wow. It was amazing. And the stagehands were like my uncles, so I'm 8, 9, 10 years old.
Yep. And
the deal was, what? You can do whatever you want, but if one of the stagehands or any of that, band manager or acts, complain about this little kid getting in the way, you're gonna have to stay in the office. You can't get out. So I was always minding my P's and Q's to not be the kid that was in the way. Otherwise, I didn't get to come back. So that was it, and it was, what a shame. I had backstage passes and everything. Did I collect them? No. Did I get autographs? Sometimes. And it was just what I did. It's not like it's not that I didn't appreciate it. It's just when you're doing it all the time, it's no big deal. Oh well, it's always going to be like this. So
were there any experiences, like anything pop, like a great experience, something that you remember, an artist, a band that you're like, oh my God, like this is the story I'll tell to my grave?
Yeah. So when my dad knows, he can listen to what's coming out of the room, and it's like, holy crap, what does my kid listen to? So he knows that I'm into the heavier side of things, which is going to have a heavier, more intense audience, right? So in theater management, you want to know, what the band is, what's any issues around the band, and what's the audience going to be like. Do we need extra security? Is it a sold out show? These kind of things. Mm-hmm. So Keith figured out I like the heavier stuff, which would have a certain crowd element. And what he would do is come and say, hey, have you ever heard of Iggy and the Stooges? I'd say, yeah, I love Iggy Pop. Okay. Have you ever heard of Todd Rundgren and Utopia? I love Todd Rundgren. Have you ever? So then I would ask, hey, Dad, when is that, that Iggy Pop band you mentioned coming? Oh, they decided not to come. So what he was doing is any band I said I liked, he would not allow to come to the arena because he could say it's a security risk.
Oh,
the way the Kennedy Center works, it's a publicly funded thing, and it's supposed to promote cultural diversity. So you can't say, well, I don't like rock music. Rock music, that's not appropriate for the Kennedy Center. You can't do that. So he would do it. Oh, this is a security risk. So he finally comes and says, hey, have you ever heard of Queen, Kansas, or Frank Marino and Mahogany something? Rush. Yeah, Rush. I'm like, what was the last one? Frank Marino? No, I've never heard any of this. So this is on the first Queen U.S. tour, the Sheer Heart Attack tour, which is in the film, right? When they come to the U.S., Bohemian Rhapsody film. So it comes Saturday night, and I'm like, I don't have to go into work. And I'm like, hey, Dad, I want to go into work with you. It's like, well, how come? And I'm like, the Queen shows tonight, right? And he's like, I thought you said you didn't know anything about it. I'm like, well, I checked them out since then. And they're pretty good. And he's like, oh shit. So he calls the box office and said, what are sales for tonight? Yeah, this was the immediate sellout. What's security? Oh, normal. And he's like, okay, call Park Police. It's a sold out show. The Kennedy Center has a huge open foyer. It's not like there's a gate you go through. Mm-hmm. Gate crashing in the 70s was a thing, So yeah, he's not happy. But when I would go to shows, I was too little to go out and sit in the crowd, dope smoking 70s raucous crowd. So I would actually sit on the stage, and I'd sit right behind the stack. Back then, they would still stack speakers. They wouldn't hang. So I would sit right behind the stack, which is 20 feet high. And I would go out right before the house lights went down. So in this case, Freddie and Brian are stage right, and they're at the big metal stage door, and the stagehand says, excuse me, fellas, and moves them out of the way, walks me out, sets the little chair down behind the stack. And the rule was, sit there, don't move until the stagehand comes and gets you. So the house lights are still up, and he's just done this, and the door's closing. I look back, and I can see Freddie and Brian looking like the door's closing, like, what the hell is this kid doing?
Yeah.
Where did they put this kid on the stage? And then the house lights went down, and Queen came out on the Sheer Heart Attack tour. So yeah, that was a pinch me moment.
Let me ask you, at an early age, you had to catch the rock and roll fever bug of when the lights go down and the crowd roars. Because
it's to this day, I say, I'm a huge sports fan, everything, love entertainment, TV film. Just that moment when, you know what, you can see the stagehands have cleared and it starts to buzz, and you're like, shit, the house lights are getting ready to go down. And when that moment and that energy, I'm getting the hairs on my arms are sticking up right now.
Me too, Tony. That's the buzz, and you can always tell. You're sitting there because I grew up. My first show was 1980, and you remember, you see, like you said, the stagehands are wrestling around, and then they start tightening things up, and then you see the light guys get in position. It's like, here we go, and
and you just look back. If you want to know, look back at the board at the back of the house when the guys at the board turn on their lights to light the board. Shit's getting ready to hit the fan.
It's usually like a little flashlight. You see a flashlight.
Yeah. They're like, they gotta make sure. Okay, gotta get oriented on the board. It's gonna get dark.
How big were these venues? What were the caps on the rooms?
Kennedy Center, the concert hall is the biggest of the 3 halls in Kennedy Center. I think it's 2,500 people.
General admission.
They're theaters. They're theater/concert hall. So it's between 2,000 and 3,000 seats, I think.
And that's reserved seating.
Yes, all reserve seating at that point. Unless you were at a club, there was, at those venues, you weren't supposed to move around, and they had the guys in the big yellow jackets to make sure that if you were trying to have fun, that they were going to mess it up.
What about when you were involved with the Capitol Center? Wasn't that a hockey rink?
Now the Capitol Center, so he didn't manage the Capitol Center, but all of the theater managers were all friends and knew each other, and they would comp each other. So the Capitol Center, the director of the Washington Capitals would call my dad, and he'd get seats for himself and the players. My dad would comp him, and then if I ever wanted to go to the Capitol Center, that was comped. So don't hate me. So I not only got to go and get an amazing seat and do all that stuff, it didn't cost anything.
Well, by the time the Capitol Center era came, were you still sitting on the side of the stage in a chair?
No,
I know.
Capitol Center comes, I'm like 13 or 14.
Yeah.
So I could go with a cousin, or that was okay. But yeah, that's for a sold out arena show. That's 18 to 20,000. That's a big place. So that's obviously much different gear. And the bands, some of the bands that played Constitution Hall and Kennedy Center originally, go and headline. Frank Marino, later headlines. There are people forget, Frank Marino, Mahogany Rush, they closed Cal Jam too. They were huge
Canadian
in the late 70s.
Canadian.
The Canadian guitar god, still one of my favorites. We contacted Frank, and he's gotten back to us, and he's just respectfully declined. He's a super private guy, and he's a little shy about the whole thing. Never done much merchandising, and was very nice. It works amazing, and it's not for me. So someday we'll make that one happen.
Tony, that was going to be one of my questions later on, but since you're there, like the creative process, like how do you do your market research? You go out there. I mean, you got to like the bands, but there's got to be trends. Like I noticed, you have a lot of, let's say, paraphernalia on Ghost, who's a hot topic. I see you have Death out there, who's maybe a little bit of a lower profile band. But how do you do your market research?
Yeah, you can see Scream Bloody Gore and Chuck right off my side here over this way. They're right there. Yeah. It's some of that you have a hunch. You can look at a social media profile and, is there something recently in the news, Soundgarden just announced they've sorted things out with the Cornell estate. There's going to be new music there,
Saw that.
something like that might drive it. But yeah, activity on social media, audience, listenership on Spotify, just things that you can look at and empirically say, okay, the audience is here. And then you look and say, what's been done? In a lot of cases, something hasn't been done. And that's our MO right there. We look for the things that are underserved. I mean, we've worked with the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix and Lennon's and all that stuff. But, we're the only company that's going to take a shot on Candlemass.
Candlemass. I love it.
Epicus, Doomicus.
Yep.
So
that's picked up on that one.
And we're a business. We have to make money. And we say we can make more money. We can't make more time. But we're always looking for that underserved hard rock metal audience that hasn't had something made for them. And, we typically do really well with that.
Do you have go ahead, Lance?
No, I was going to say, who would you consider your competition? Like, who's the threat in your market?
I don't know. Nobody's smart enough or dumb enough so far to really focus on music.
Because there are other companies that do what you do, but a lot of them are, they're plastic. Like, I'm not saying they're bad products, but they're, the detail on your stuff is,
there's
top class.
There's high end. We do is a collectible statuary. So it's a fine arts production piece. It's handmade molds. Parts are cast by hand, pulled out by hand, cleaned. Nothing mass produced, and we're never going to make 3,000 of anything. And we don't rely on the Walmarts and the Targets and places like that. We're really a direct-to-consumer company. Yeah. I mean, in statuary, the company that would be most like us would probably be Sideshow, and they've done some music things, but they're really focused on the TV film, comic, fanboy stuff, and that's something that we've been asked to do, and we're just going to stay focused on music for now. Never say never.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as somebody focused on music specifically and merchandising, I think we're the only ones really.
Tony, I hate to go back to my little Dan Marino guy, but who would do this? Because the attention
is that a McFarlane piece?
Is it?
I mean, McFarlane, they did some things in music early on, and then they had MLB, NHL, NBA licenses, and for my mind, they're the ones that did a really good job with it, and were in it for a period of time. I don't think they're doing it anymore.
The attention to detail on this is outstanding.
Mm-hmm. They were really good at doing that. I collected some of it. The sports license, everything we do is officially licensed. We've never done anything that's not working directly with the band or management, and we won't.
Yeah.
They did the same thing. When you get into sports licensing and doing things officially, it can always be a challenge. In sports, it's particularly a challenge because in baseball in particular, you've got if you want to do Derek Jeter, you'd need a license with Derek Jeter, you need a license with Major League Baseball, and then you need a license with the Players Association. There's 3 levels of approval, additional cost. So that I got asked out on another interview, and the why of it from what we know, it just might not be a little cost prohibitive. It's so expensive and a pain in the ass to do it officially that not a lot of it being done right now.
And that probably ties in with your, all the variables go in. You're like, okay, well, how difficult is this going to be? How many hurdles do we have to clear?
There are band, licenses that we've passed on because we think, to get the official approval and do everything we need to do to have it be official might be more than we can make happen. So there are a few licenses we've passed on just because we think to do it officially might be problematic.
Can you share any of those?
No.
Okay.
No. And the thing is, sometimes, and it will be at a particular moment in time, it's problematic. And then later on, it's not. If we wanted to do something with Motley Crue today and do the original lineup, there might be some issues. Right? So, but we worked with the Crew, 5 years ago, and it was fine.
Well, didn't Mick just get cut out? Can he speak for himself now?
You know what? You can read the same stuff I can. I only know what's in the press about it. What a shame.
I'm joking, bud. I know.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Tony, just like when you are engaging in conversations with, let's say, management of a band, like take us through the discussions with the artist. Like, do you actually engage with the artist, or do you get feedback from them, or do you pass ideas with these guys? I mean, pick a band, Sabbath, Guns N' Roses, Motorhead. Like, what was some of your experiences actually collaborating with the artists themselves?
Well, Sabbath was, now that, the last tour, the final days have gone, there's really, 4 separate, management groups. There's the Osbournes, of course, and then Tony's people in the UK, and then Geezer and Bill. So it's 4 separate groups, but we would do a Black Sabbath license with one of the big merchandising companies, and I think Sabbath is via Bravado, which is Universal. So that's where the agreement comes from. But then when the work's happening, all of those camps need to be consulted, and we, in the Sabbath case, we just said we want to do 1975, which is right back there, the Sabotage era. For me, they're at their peak there, so I just picked that because I just think that's when they're the most powerful. That record was one of their best, and everybody had a great stage costume and looked amazing. So we hit them up and say, we want to do Sabotage. Here's what you were wearing, and if the band's good with it, there's of course photos. What we really look for is I like to find video when it exists. Yeah, there we go. The video doesn't have to be the most amazing quality, but when we're looking for a pose, or how we're going to pose or do a design, we don't do posed things like they're posing for a photograph. We want it to look like they were on stage in 1975. So if you did a silhouette of these guys, it could look like Baltimore Civic Center in 75 when they came through there and I saw them. The reason we do video is you can get fooled with a photograph. It could be an amazing photo and a performer's doing something, that's cool, but it could just be an oddball moment. It's not something that if you were to see them, that you would see them do a lot.
Oh, you're looking for a trademark move.
I'm looking for signature things that they do. So if I gave you a silhouette of any particular performer, you would know who it was.
An Angus Duck Walk, an Eddie Flying V.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So video helps us do that. Photographs we can get fooled. Now we still use photographs. Obviously, we need pictures from all different angles to be able to sculpt a portrait. But that those are the basics. But yeah, video when it exists, we like to do that because it confirms, hey, this is an iconic moment that you would have seen if you saw the band back in the day.
Before Lance goes further with his visuals, Eddie Van Halen, I got a little Eddie Van Halen Frankenstrat. Obviously, this isn't your work. You ever try working with the original Van Halen era, like a nice fair warning? Oh my God, that'd
well,
be
there
great.
was never, since Knucklebonz was founded in 2003, and there was no such thing as Van Halen management at that time. It was the brothers, or maybe Eddie and Dave, and everybody else. But a couple of years afterward, we founded, and we've done Randy Rhoads and Slash, and we're getting ready to do Zach Wild. We got the contact info for Eddie's management, and we reached out to Ed, and they got right back to us, and we're very polite to say this stuff looks great. This is just not something Ed wants to do right now. So every year about this time, I would find out who Ed's management was and contact them, and usually get the polite no thank you. But a little over, and this is 10 plus years ago, I've done the yearly, hey, would you consider working with us, and got the polite no. And I got an email out of the blue from this really weird AOL account, pagemeester@aol.com. And it says, hey, this is Eddie. I just fired my management. I see there's this collectables thing you want to do. I never heard about it. Can you please call me? So I'm thinking, this is a really great troll job from one of my friends. So there's a phone number in there. I'm like, this is where you want to, all right, I'll play along. And I call the number, and I still have it in my cell phone, Eddie Van Halen's cell phone number. And I call him, and it's a voicemail, and I'm like, and they've done a really good job. That actually sounded like Eddie Van Halen. And about 10 minutes later, the phone rings, and it's like, hey, this is Ed. Sorry, my man, tell me about this. My manager didn't show it to me. So I explained what we did and what we wanted to do. And he's like, okay, that actually sounds pretty cool. And this was right before Thanksgiving. And he said, Wolfie's coming in town, and, can we do this after the holidays? And I said, of course. So after the holidays, I ring him up and leave a message, and leave a second message, and he's got new management. We go to them, and it came back, okay, well, Ed's says thanks, but he's gonna respectfully decline. So I'm like, that's cool. So it's almost 2 years ago now. We get a call from Ed's new attorney. He used to be the head lead counsel at Fender Guitar. So he knew Ed from the Charvel deals and stuff there with that company. And he says, I'm representing Ed. We're circling back on this collectibles thing. He'd like to do it. Would you still consider it? I'm like, yeah, we're still interested. So we started working on it and got to the final approval stages, and worked with a guy named Matt Brock, his longtime guitar tech and business
assistant
guy. Yeah. And got to the very end, and Ed passed away, sadly, right when we were getting to the end of it. And then now all the business changes because Ed's gone. So it's just sitting there. It's ready to go. It's 1977. He's got on the white sparkly shirt, the maroon pants, the white shoes, the white Frankenstrat, the big rig behind him, the speaker bomb. So it's like if you saw the first tour that they went out with Sabbath. Yeah. The first US tour, it would have been like you were there for that. He's on one knee, mouth open.
Tapping. You have you have prototypes of this, Tony?
Finished. It's in the vault. We had it here, and I got it. Every time I would look at it, I would get a little bit sad. So we put it in the vault. So hopefully at some point we'll be able to release it to you. But it's done. It's done, and it's.
I wonder if Wolfie knows about that story, Dad.
I'm sure he does. I'm sure he does.
Man.
But the business surrounding it, my guess is, it would be up to him probably. But
Tony, one of the things we passed on earlier, we don't want to skip it, is the origins of Knucklebonz. Were you a creative kid? I know you said it was in your blood when the stage lights go down, but Were you like a Lego kid or somebody that liked to build crap? And how did you
I mean,
tie it together?
I
And the
was
Knucklebones name, where did the Knucklebones name come from?
So Knucklebonz' name is, I wanted, it's bone crunching metal. It's not, no, Knucklebonz was the nickname of this little, we're not even sure, it wasn't a bear or a dog. It was this little odd, pitiful little stuffed animal that had like, its head was hanging on by a string and his arm was off. He had one eye, but it was like so fragile. My grandmother would give it to me when it was bedtime, and it would be like, "Oh, you have to be careful. Oh, poor Knucklebones. Don't hurt Knucklebones." And that was the get me to not be a psycho 5-year-old.
That's
So
funny.
Knucklebones, my grandmother made that.
That's actually an awesome story.
Too late. You're
not
sitting
bone crunching
side
metal.
stage. It's too late. That ship sailed. You're sitting side stage for Frank Marino as a 6-year-old. It's awesome.
That's where that comes from. He's still around. He's still in the corner of the studio there. We still have him.
What about bands like Rush?
We did a Neil Peart in 2007, and we did pre-orders on Getting Alex, and the interest just wasn't as strong as we had hoped at that point. We're a business, so if the pre-orders aren't strong enough, sometimes we just will shelf something. So we'll come back to it at some point, because I'm a huge progressive rock and Rush fan. Loved ELP, loved Yes, loved Rush.
Hey, you see that announcement about that ELP tour this summer?
No, what?
Yeah, I just saw it yesterday. I think I got one of our publicists sent it. It's some weird tour. Who's still alive? Keith Emerson?
Carl Palmer.
It's a bogus tour. It's like they take live footage from the old days and they sync it up, and they have Carl Palmer's band plays with him, and then they sync it up to the music. Not my kind of thing. I mean, if you if you like that, not my thing.
I was such a huge ELP fan. If it comes through the Bay Area here, I'll go, because I love ELP. Keep getting to meet and work with Keith Emerson is a highlight for me here. We did the whole rig that he had at Cal Jam, that was like 15 feet tall and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was a case where Keith didn't have merchandising management. He did everything himself. So I worked right with him, and we'd meet at his favorite place in Santa Monica and have a spritzer, and I'd go over the work in progress with him. It was amazing. He was such a great guy. And he took me to the practice studio and pulled out the rig. It wasn't set up, so it was all in pieces. So I got to see all of that stuff from Cal Jam, and he hit me to only the first layer. That had thing like 3 or 4 layers with all the patch cords and everything, and then the little monitor at the top. The only thing that worked was the bottom Moog. Everything else was just for show. I'm like, I kind of wish you didn't tell me that.
Yeah. Well, unlike those Grateful Dead walls of sound. Remember when the Dead used to tour with that the wall of sound? Was that real or was that fake?
Probably not. I mean, Kiss would tell you in the day when they went out, a working Marshall cabinet's expensive, and they'd have their back line, and then they'd have like 2 more rows of it, and there was nothing in it. It was just a cabinet, and they'd have to instruct the light guys to do not shoot the back of the stage, because it would shoot right through it, and you could see that there was nothing in there.
Well, it's like with the old Van Halen stages. You had all those amps, but that's exactly what the imagery that makes Knucklebones just great, because we are relying on the imagery of yesteryear, of how it used to be, how we used to get an album and stare at it and look at it and associate it. Now you got a thumbnail, and how disheartening is that?
I mean, so the advent of digital music, you can say there's a positive and negative for that, but the absolute negative is just what you hit on there. album art is sometimes how we discovered bands, and it was the most
Oh.
revered thing. And you didn't have MTV yet, and you'd get a new record. What was better than getting a new record and dropping the needle on that sucker and putting on the headphones and then just going over and looking for the hidden message and whatever you could see, and you would stare at it for hours on end looking for the thing that you missed or whatever. But it was something you did. You generally didn't have, I didn't have a lot of information. ELP, brain salad surgery, I bought because of the Giger painting.
Yeah.
I bought the first Kiss record because of the makeup on the album covers.
Iron Maiden, the
A
imagery.
bunch of records like that. Yeah, Maiden was a friend had that one, so I didn't actually go to the record store and see Eddie, but there was plenty of that. But so yeah, losing album art, that's a big bummer, and the whole marriage of visuals with the stage production and what artists look like, how they dressed, what the album art was. And then we had maybe 3 magazines that we gave a shit about: Circus, Cream, and Hit Parade. That was it. Rolling Stone. I was too damn dumb to read Rolling Stone.
And then Kerrang came around from
Kerrang later, yeah, and they're still at it. They do a great job.
But that was hard to read. The American mags, they were dummied down, and then you find out later they're like ghostwriters, and the
dumber the better. Keep it simple for me. I wanted cool pictures. I wanted to know, hey, what's the band up to, and I didn't want my views on life manipulated.
This is a fun little story. A couple of weeks ago, we were down at Rockin' Pod in Nashville, and we interviewed Metal Dave Glessner. He's Talk Louder podcast, but he wrote for Metal Edge back in the day with Jerry Miller and Paul Gargano, that crew. And oh my God, Tony, we spent a half hour just geeking out talking about this, and it was like, it was great. It was,
that's the fun thing. And we've still got it. It's as important, if not more important than ever. And we've got 50 years of it. That's never going to change. But people will come up to it and say, well, Knucklebonz has a limited lifespan. And I'm like, well, other than, do you have some medical information on myself? What do you mean? Okay. Of course, it does have a limited lifespan. We're all going to die at some point. But what the point they're trying to make is some points there's not going to be rock stars. And I just laugh. I'm like, no. The difference is the era we're talking about, it was heavily curated. Right? There was only a few records that could go on the record stand. There wasn't a ton you weren't learning about hard rock and metal in particular on the radio very much. So you had those magazines and word of mouth and the record store. Now there's more amazing musicianship and rock stardom than ever, but you get hit with this goddamn fire hose. With the digital streams and everything, there's so much of it. How do I find that jewel like I did when I went into, Sam Goody or Tower Records and just started flipping through the bins and went, whoa. I had dozens of choices, hundreds versus millions coming at me all the time. So it's just harder to find. And, kids today just have so much to choose from. It just stands the reason that, to create the reverence for it is harder. Doesn't mean that it won't exist. Of course it will. Yeah. That's dumb to say that. That's the old, rock and roll is dead. Oh man, you missed it. Rock and roll is dead. No, rock and roll music is doing just fine.
It's just changed. It's just different.
How you arrive at that super fan point is just way different. That's all.
Yeah. Hey Tony, we want to go into the visual part of the show. So we're trying to do something different than maybe the other guys out there. So as you saw, I've created a little presentation. So John and I geeked out yesterday, and we spent an hour going through your website. And we were like, oh, that fucking one's killer. Let's put that on a slide. And so is that one. And so we're going to put a little PowerPoint up, and I want you to talk about some of these images, right? What they mean to you and that kind of stuff. But before we get to that,
you already shocked me with the other ones that I hadn't seen in years. So
well, we'll pull some more up here. But I had a question. Here's like a weird one. Did an artist ever approach you, like versus you going to them? Did you ever have a band, ring you and say, "Man, I'd like to work with you," and you're like, "Wait, what?"
I mean, today that's how most of it happens. We really don't do any outbound licensing anymore. We've been at it long enough, and we're unique enough. If someone's interested in the high end category, we get a lot of inbound things now. 20 years ago, that was complete opposite.
Any bands like maybe on the horizon that you'd be like, oh, here's something you could throw us a nugget. Maybe it's not even in a prototype, but maybe just in your ideation stage.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I can share a few things. So you mean things that might be coming or that are coming we haven't talked about? Yeah. So well, here's a good one right here. So we color variants and variant products are very popular in toys and collectibles. We haven't done a ton of it. But Randy Rhoads, this is our third Randy Rhoads statue we did. The company was founded. So this right here, we're going to do 2 color variants on it. The Rhoads estate just approved them. So that outfit there, that's from Blizzard of Oz era. And we're going to do the brown version of that leather suit, and there'll be a really small run of polka dot V and a really small run of the White Jackson guitar with the Concord, he called it. So that's coming, and those are going into production right now. Chris Cornell launches tomorrow. Chris Cornell of Soundgarden is coming. What else can I talk about? A new Slayer set is coming. That's been sold out for a while. Our original Slayer set. That's one that fans have been beating us up to say, when can we have a new Slayer set? And when people come,
who's into Slayer? Is it Bastoff and Gary Holt, or is it original?
It'll be Hanneman and Tom Araya and Kerry King.
No Lombardo.
We asked the band who is Slayer, and those are the names they gave us.
Interesting.
They did ask me.
Yeah,
who Slayer is.
We asked the band who is Slayer, and they tell us.
Jesus.
That's just, I mean, that's the one of the aspects of doing thing officially licensed. You can only do what they will approve. So new Slayer sets coming. Kiss Destroyer will come later this year. So we started with Love Gun with Kiss and did Alive and Hotter Than Hell and Dynasty. So arguably the most popular era is coming. And those are sculpting's really far along, either finished or really far along on all of those. Yeah, there's the Dynasty set. And then we're going to do something that's kind of fun. Have you seen the parody photo of Bruce Lee behind the turntables?
I have not.
No, I don't know that one.
You guys got the internet up there. Do a search, Bruce Lee DJ Dragon.
You got that, Walt?
Yep.
And you will see a black and white photo. Someone's taking a picture of Bruce doing some of his Jeet Kune Do stuff, and it just the pose he's in, it looks like he's spinning turntables. So we've done, it's called DJ Dragon. So it's still music. We're stretching things a little bit, but it's still going to be a guy involved in music. In this case, it's going to be Bruce Lee. That I think it's in one of the Avengers movies. Tony Stark is wearing the shirt when they're in the labs talking about how they're going to combat evil. So it's Tony Stark is wearing the shirt in the movie, and that it blew up.
Listeners, we have a screen up here, and he's referring to the
parody photo, DJ Dragon.
What looking at this Kiss Dynasty, that it wasn't a great musical era, but they look great there. Those are some awesome looking figurines with the color.
The band, well, and the thing is that the band had been all black and silver to that point, right? That's the first time they started doing color, and each band member got their own signature color. This is not the favorite era of the band at this point. The guys, we're told, don't particularly like these costumes as much. They're amazing looking, but so Destroy's coming. We just signed a new Ghost license, so there'll be more stuff coming from Papa and all the nameless schools.
This Pantera is interesting. It's Phil with the long hair era.
That was around the end of the band the first time around, I think, right?
Yeah, reinventing the steel. So this is, you know, I think that's one of the last shows they closed the big festival. So that's where everything they're wearing in there. I think that's Oz. I think that was Ozfest, if memory serves. They were a headliner in Ozfest. So yeah, Phil's got he's the Cajun swamp man there with the big beard and the long hair.
That was one of the talking points during pre-production. Walt and I were talking about was, how do you decide what to do? I mean, some are obvious, but like, does you and your staff have a sit down and, you know, majority wins on what you're going to do? What era, what, how do you decide that?
I mean, it's a combination of things. It's first of all, it needs to, we have a saying, is the final statue going to have a monster movie quality? And it doesn't mean Monsters of Rock. It's just as a piece of statuary, you know, if you were to come in to your man cave or where you've got your things displayed and somebody sees it across the room, does it stop them and have them say, holy shit, what is that? Right. And, you know, not every amazing rock star in the world is going to make a great collectible statue. So we look for, you know, a monster movie element to it, you know, either from costuming or a pose or instrument or, you know, something. And I mean, you look at Phil Lynott, you got Phil Lynott out of Thin Lizzy up there. Yeah, the monster movie element there of him is just that, you know, that classic bass with the mirrored pick guard and, you know, the black jacket with the sleeves rolled up and the boots. And I mean, that's just monster movie.
Yeah.
So we look for that. Is it going to make a great piece of statuary? That's the best thing to ask yourself. Will it be interesting to look at if you didn't know anything about the band? That's one of the places we'll start. And then, you know, in a lot of cases, it's something that we all know well and grew up with. So there are some no brainers.
Yeah.
Like I love this Billy Gibbons one because, you know, it's just the fuzzy guitar and he's got the hat. It's something. I drew my eye to that one. I'm like, that's fucking killer.
This year, 40 years since DeGueo and 40 years since
Eliminator
and 50 years since DeGueo this year.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need the non-obvious to make it pop, to give it that, you know, like the Scorpions. Why didn't you ever see Matthias Jabs with a conductor hat on and looks like the Captain Obvious jacket?
Yeah, I don't know what era this was. This was late 80s, maybe?
Yeah, that's when they closed that show in Russia.
Oh, the Moscow Peace Festival. We were just talking to Bob Gruen about that a few weeks ago.
Oh, Gorky Park. It's at the Gorky Park.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Matthias is wearing that, and it's a parody of one of the Russian police forces. Matthias, we sent him the statues. He did a nice review from us from his record shop in guitar shop in Munich. It was wild. It was wild seeing Matthias actually just with the cell phone camera pull it out. Here's me. Here's Rudolph. Mouth open, of course. It was funny.
Any reason why no Francis Buckles? Or
again, we asked the band.
He's not in the band.
What? Who are the Scorpions? And this is what.
Well, it's Scorpions now, and then I get you.
Yeah, I mean that will happen, and then sometimes just with the bands just having a certain lineup, we will get precluded sometimes if a band member is no longer alive and there's a state involved. So when we had our Who license, it was only Pete and Roger. The estates stuck their hand up and said, we're not comfortable with this. So we didn't get Mooney or John Entwistle. That's something that was a shame, because we had a really great design for Mooney where he's wrecked the drum kit and jumping over the kick drum in a crazed Mooney face.
Yeah, well, that's him. That's him.
Yeah. So we've got some amazing stuff in the archive that was ready, and for the officially licensed reasons, just never made it out. But never say never. If you just said that I could be able to do the Guns N' Roses set, that we did, and have it be officially licensed with everybody on the same page, 10 years ago, I would have said, probably not going to happen.
Well, you could have Tobias from Ghost. He'll keep you in business for the next 20 years with all the changes in his strategy.
That stuff is just, the whole thing is so amazing. The fact his musicianship to go and just basically make a record and then come out and say, hire the band to play it, and the mythos that he's created behind Papa. It's just so badass, and so what I was looking for in the 70s. That's the kind of stuff that you would gravitate to. And you had Alice and Kiss and some others, but not a ton of it. There's a lot of that stuff now that's really cool. Maria Brink, and In This Moment, that stuff, the production value of that show when it opens, that's fucking heavy metal Broadway right there, man.
And it's funny. I saw her once, talented singer, but she doesn't move. She just stands in one spot with dressing sexy, bloody. She has fans blowing all over the place. Her hair, her skirt, fishnet stockings. And then she's got these dancers around her, and she just sings, doesn't move. Amazing.
It's awesome.
Right?
Yeah. So that's something that we might do here for too long.
So these were some that we saw that you probably, the Kiss ones, right? These are sold out. These are Hall of Famers, right? These had to be like early stage and totally killer ones, right?
Yeah. So, and look at the Hotter Than Hell, Gene with that skull and crossbones, shirt, that he only wore that for a little bit, before the costume changes.
Yeah, that's that Mike Douglas era.
Yeah. So with the what was her name? Dodie, whatever, had busted his balls about being a nice kid from Queens, which is that's exactly who they are.
I gotta ask the Alive one. I know Paul's always kept himself in shape. Man, he looks fantastic in that little picture.
Paul's so annoying. He looks amazing. Today he's 70 whatever and still in amazing shape.
Yeah, he looks really good in that.
We talked about the Sabbath one, but this is the other one. New, it's coming out soon.
Came out. So the era I told you where I sandbagged my dad into booking Queen into the Kennedy Center.
Yeah.
this is what they looked like right here. So this is their Queen. They've been touring Queen 2 and Sheer Heart Attack drops while they're out, and the Killer Queen single starts to get airplay here in the U.S. So that's, as far as Queen is what we know, the arena act that comes later. That's the moment where it first starts right there. That's when they really start to blow up.
I love the whole simple stage thing, like that's more than just on a little shelf. You need like a whole area. Like you need a table in your man cave to make these stage gears. It's freaking killer.
Yeah, so that whole thing is
how big is that?
Those are at scale. I mean, that's behind me. We found those lights. Those are used in museum and jewelry displays. So they're amazing, and I can actually put little gels on them like you do Lecos, and they don't generate any heat, which is good because that truss is not metal. It's a plastic. We made all that here. But, that's something, if we throw it on the stage and we want to try real hard, we can, shoot it low and shoot the back of the truss and the lights. And if you're just looking through the portfolio of photos and you don't know what you're looking at, you'll just go through and say, oh, I've never seen that picture of Freddie. You won't know, it's a statue in some cases.
Tony, I just came up with a great creative idea for your company. I think you need to get one of those mobile vans, big wagons, and a Knucklebonz on the outside, and you need to make a traveling museum. You take all these things, and then you bring it to places like all the summer shed package tours. Pay a small fee, you come in and you go through your museum, and you have all this stuff on display.
Are you guys available? If we get the van, could you do that?
Yeah. Hey, I'm self-employed. I'll put a crew together.
We'll provide the van and the stuff. I just don't want to do the travel.
Hey, Tony, I had a question. Like, I know I'm all over the place here, but like in the industry I work in, we have like a stage gating process, right? Where you go from ideation to prototyping to validation to commercialization. Like, is it you? Or do you have like a team of 5, 6, 10, 20, 50 guys? Like, how's it all done?
And, I'm the lead designer, so it starts here, but then we have, other amazing designers and sculptors that will be involved. And then we've got the production teams overseas. All of our stuff for 20 years has been made in Southern China, just like Hasbro and Mattel and everybody in between. That's where the skilled artisans are, sit down and make this stuff by hand. We just don't have enough of that here in the States right now. And a production team for a single product will be anywhere from 20 to 30 people. They won't stay on the project the whole time. The mold the statue's done. We get the original parts cast. The mold makers make the production molds, and they hand off to the finishing team, and they take the rough statue out and clean it, get it ready for priming and painting. And then the paint team will be split up to where there's, primary color painters, down to, it's typically 1 or 2 painters that will do a portrait. If it's a realistic thing, like Witchy Poo there, Black Sabbath Witch, there is typically an artist sitting down and painting that portrait. But yeah, 20 to 30 people will work on a production at any given time. And then we got to get it in a package safely and get it to fans around the world. So that we got to do import export. Everything comes here to the US first and then goes out to the rest of the world. Our warehouse is in the East. We just moved it from the West to the East into Memphis. That's where everything comes from.
That's
the little known thoughts about how the whole product comes together. It's like what happens behind the scenes, right? Where nobody thinks about that, right?
Yeah.
And why certain things have to be the price point on certain things, right? It's a business. You have to make profit. You have to cover your overhead and your costs.
Yeah, we're a manufacturing business ultimately.
Right.
officially licensed.
Well, Tony, I am adept in alliance management, contractual negotiations, and project management. So
Okay.
if you're ever up for
all of that comes into play at some point.
If you're ever looking for a guy, it's like just hit me up.
We need help. We need help. But
hey, Tony, this Pink Floyd one in the corner, that draw our eye, the Dark Side of the Moon, like what is that? Is that like a roving visual?
That's what that is from early 75, so 50 years of Dark Side of the Moon this year. So they released Dark Side of the Moon, or they start playing it in 74, I believe, and then release it and then start touring it in 75. And they had Ian Ames make those animated films that coincide with the whole track. Mm-hmm. And they built the circular screen that you see there with the lights around it. And the nickname Floyd has for him is Mr. Screen. So from that time forward, Pink Floyd has always had that, in the center of the stage.
Yeah.
So that's a resin statue. The lights don't work. That's just a visual representation of what you would see at a moment on the stage. But that particular series is what we call On Tour. So we have Rock Icons, which is the realistic, moments of, live performance pieces. And then we have what's called 3D vinyl, which is anything that's inspired by album art, which are the things on the right there. So you can see Blackout. And then we have On Tour, which is anything that's a tour piece. So if you want to flip the camera around to me, I've actually got Blackout right here. I'll flip it around for you so you can get a better sense of what it is. So,
oh my God.
Wow.
So this came about because we had been in business for, maybe a decade. And we would hear from fans and that, this stuff's amazing. It's really cool. I'm a huge fan of this band, but I would never buy any of the stuff. We're like, well, wait a minute. I was with you right up until the end where you said you love everything, you're not going to buy it. Why not? And they said, I'm just not into the statue category. I never bought a bobblehead or an action figure or a statue. I've never bought anything like that, and I never will. So we thought we need to figure out something for that fan. So we just started to kick it around and say, okay, what will every fan do? Every fan loved album art. We talked about, the reverence we had for it. And everybody wears a t-shirt with the album on it. So we thought, why don't we make statuary based on the album? And in this case, this is a 12 by 12 that you can actually wall mount. So if you're not a person that's into that kind of thing, you might not have even a place to display it. So we gave him a chance to put it on the wall, like you would a gold record or anything, and that got it out of the way. So that was the idea for 3D vinyl. So those are the three product lines we've got now, and each one is just trying to give underserved music fans something that somebody else might not think about or wouldn't bother to produce. We don't re-release anything. We never make more than 3,000 of anything we've ever done. And in Blackout's case there, that was released in 1982. So the edition numbers, 1982 on that, smaller. But for 20 years, we will say, hey, what do you want to see? And fans will say, hey, I want the Jimmy Page Stormtrooper from 2009 or 8. And we have to say, we might do another Stormtrooper design, but 20 years, we've never re-released anything, and we won't, because we appreciate the collectors that have been there and know the value of the things that we've created that they have, and we don't want to sully that by re-releasing something. That's not cool. So we won't do it. So as a result, on the secondary market, our things can be very, very expensive, but we don't participate in that. The fans decide what the value of something is. In that case, we don't.
Man, it's just awesome, Tony, all this stuff. Where can people, what's the best way of finding it? What's your socials?
Knucklebones.com, and typically all the socials, if you just type in knuckle like your hand, BONZ, all one word, you'll find us.
And listeners, we do have, once this episode airs for 2 weeks, we have a 10% off code, 5PCK2023, and it will be on the show notes, and we'll share it on all our platforms. Walt, I'll let you.
Yeah, I guess the last slide, Tony, was on your beverage series, like what I'm sharing here. So you're expanding your horizons there. I love the Cliff Burton Cliff-A-Mall IPA. It's
Cliff-A-Mall IPA. That was a one-day sellout. So we thought, okay, we like music, we like beer. Why don't we try to do some of the same things, that we do around the collectible series and beer? And we've made some really cool beers, and fans really enjoy them. The unfortunate thing is the beer and liquor laws that were written by the mob attorneys and advocates after the fall of prohibition. The things that we can do direct to consumer and all the cool stuff and marketing and interesting things, most of the time we can't do any of it because of just that it's such a controlled thing. We can't sell direct to consumer. We have to go through a distributor. We can't sell directly to a store. We have to go through a distributor. So a lot of what we hope for that is prohibited just by the way the laws are today. Now that supposedly Amazon is going to get into the business, and those guys, they might change something. It'll take somebody of that size, but it's been a little frustrating that, we can't easily get the product to people around the world like we do the collectibles, just because it's such a controlled thing.
Yeah. Still pretty cool though. It just lends itself to the whole portfolio.
Very cool. The product side's great. Just the too many freaking rules.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to know how many people actually open it up and drink it. Isn't it a collectible thing?
Go on eBay and look at the Sabbath can. You could have bought when it went out a 4-pack for either side of $20. A single can, because it's sold out now, will be like $30 or $40. I'm like, what? We're doing it all wrong. We should have just made the beer, poured it out, and that would have been a better business.
Yeah.
But no, the collectible aspect that's absolutely there. So all the assumptions we made as far as what fans might like, we were right on. It's just the business surrounding it is so locked down, it makes it tough.
No, what I was getting at was, don't even put beer in it. If people aren't really opening it up and drinking it, I got a 4-pack of this Gene Simmons soda. I've never tried it. It's just, it's set up.
No, I'd say there's, we don't have any data to say it, but we know there are people that the person that does that is the same person that buys 2 of everything that we do. One to show, one to go is the saying. But hardcore super fan collectors, something limited like what we do, will buy 2 of them, and they'll display one, and then they'll put one in their archive and may decide to sell it on the secondary, later.
Well, that goes back to the beginning of the interview when we were talking about Circus and Hit Parader. I used to buy 2 of them. Yeah, one to cut up and put in my locker
on the wall, and one went in a box somewhere, and you still got it. Yeah.
Oh my God, I do. I don't have them all, but so. Well,
Tony, but funny note to end it on the blackout. For me personally, I'll never forget it. It was the day after Donald Trump won the nomination for president a few years ago. I slammed my car door against my head, rushing, and I had blood coming out of my eye. My wife is like, "You got to go to the hospital." I fought it. I finally went with my son, And sure enough, what do? They stitch me up above the eye and they put me the bandage around my head just like that. So what did I do? I came home and I told my son, I said, get your phone out. And I put 2 forks in my eyes and I closed my eyes. And I have a picture of that somewhere. I got to dig it out and find it. I made a bookmarker out of it. The only thing missing is the mustache, but it looks exactly like it.
Send that to us. We'll put it up on our socials next to Black.
I will. I'll find it. I have it somewhere.
Metal Walt, living the dream.
living the dream with 2 less forks in his cutlery drawer.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, Tony, hey, thanks, man. We go on all day, but we got stuff to do as you do as well. So thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great.
Thank you.
Great sharing some stories.
Okay.
It was
Take
great.
care, man.
Nice to talk to you, Tony. See you again. Cheers.